that we can serve that are coming into Buellton because we're growing. So we would like the help of the city of Buellton in securing a site this year. I got the opportunity to meet with Scott about a particular site, and we kind of looked at some advantages of being there and what that might look like, you know, if the city decided to go in that direction. We're not locked into any particular site, but we would like to open our doors this year. But we also want to be an asset to our community before we can even open our doors. So something we're doing is we set up a partnership and co-wrote a grant with the San Ynez Botanic Garden and got the grant. People are so generous in this community. And we are doing a 6-month series of programs of outdoor activities at the garden. So I'll be following up with an email, and I'd love the opportunity to speak with anybody who's interested, just to speak with each of you about the benefits that we could bring to this community and more about our program. So that'll come in an email as well. I would love to share my screen and sharing and starting a presentation just to make sure I've hit all our points. So we want to build local. We're looking at sites all across the valley, but Buellton just really feels like the best fit for us as far as this being such a great meeting point of tourists and locals, and being such a connection point where we're right off the freeway. The city council has already created some wonderful partnerships with the Paws Dog Park and the Botanic Garden of working with nonprofits and kind of allowing nonprofits to take the burden of providing the service, but providing some help, support, infrastructure to allow that to come into being sooner rather than later. An outdoor children's museum is going to make this beautiful place we live accessible. I take my kids hiking all over the place. We're outdoors all the time, but not everybody can do that. And it just doesn't feel right to have just my kids and just a few kids able to access nature. So an outdoor children's museum will be a great place to learn. We've already spoken with Boys and Girls Club, the Presbyterian preschool, all the local church youth groups. We've got, 5 different teachers from 4 different schools across the valley on our board and our council that are, long-term educators that are definitely advocating with their schools. We've got a huge swelling amount of support from the local community for building this. And really our goal is to make nature accessible for people of all incomes, backgrounds, languages. Part of another grant that we're writing is to be able to make sure all of our signage is in English, Spanish, one version of Chinese, so that all the tourists and people that are traveling here can access what we're providing. We talked about our 6-month series, and that's about it. We ran a wonderful coloring campaign in the kind of fall and winter, and we got responses from over 130 families in the middle of COVID, in the middle of school shutdowns, in the middle of the holidays. We just had hundreds of people write in, and the schools were all very interested in setting up partnerships with something that they could very easily and for them very inexpensively bus kids to come over the seasons, have their students. I spoke with 3 different teachers that said, I want my students to come 6 times in the year because then they can see the land in the different seasons and really learn in that way. So that's what we're looking for. And again, our big ask is the support of council and securing a site this year so we can get our doors open.
Wish you well with that, Ashley. I think we've got you've got a wide open space. Although we are a small community, you've got 6 acres in the river park. You've got different areas that you can take groups to, and they can stretch their muscles and fly with their wings to the rest of the valley. We wish you well with it. I wish you well with it.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And I understand you will be present at the March 6th meeting at Williamson property. Is that correct?
I haven't heard about that, but I can follow up with Scott to get more information.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming up tonight and showing us what's going on.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
I would like to pipe in that I have been serving on the advisory committee for this nonprofit, just so that we can explore any conflict of interests or anything like that. So I just wanted to put that out there since I don't think we've discussed it yet.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for that. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Alicia's been a huge asset to our team, and we just have
No.
a huge group of volunteers that are, well, you've also been a little bit busy running for council too. Fair enough. But yeah, we just,
Madam Mayor, I
Yep.
think this is a great idea for our kids to get their hands dirty and get outside. You know, it's been a long time since a lot of them have been outside, so I'm really in support of this.
couldn't come at a better time.
Is
Yeah, our
is
kids
Jesse, Greg, and Kylie your siblings?
Yes, yeah, those are all my siblings.
I haven't seen your dad in about a year. Tell him hi for me.
I sure will. I will. He's at the beach a lot these days with all his grandkids.
There you go.
Nice.
Yay.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment that's come in, Linda?
Yeah, actually, Kathy Vreeland wanted to say a few words. So she's
Wonderful.
on the screen.
Kathy, go for it.
Some little announcements of some upcoming activities and things that we're working on at the chamber. One is April 29th. I think I sent this out to y'all, but just in case, mark your calendars. McLean Cellars down on Industrial Way is going to be hosting their grand opening kind of ribbon cutting. We're going to try to do it in person again, but they're looking forward to hosting everybody at their wine tasting room there. Actually, April 17th, also a couple things our local Rotary is doing. So just so you're aware, April 17th, we're going to be doing a McMurray Road cleanup. We did one a while back and we had, I think, 9 to 11 bags of trash that we got cleaned up there along McMurray Road. So we're going to be doing that again on the 17th, our local Buellton Rotary Club. And also we're working with the Botanic Garden, and on that line of families and kids and activities, we're actually helping them with their family garden. So we put in a stairway kind of a little bridge stairway area last weekend. This coming weekend, we're going to be building a log car and some other games and structures there for kids to do in the Botanic Garden. So excited about that. And then lastly, our events for the chamber, as you know, last year we had to cancel and postpone the Chili Fest, the Brew Fest. We've had to postpone again the Chili Fest. Normally we do that in March. We're not able to do that this year right now, possibly in the fall, but we're not too sure yet. But the Brew Fest, we're going to try to go and do a virtual event. So our event organizers have been doing these about once a month throughout the Central Coast region. So we're going to give it a go. The idea is a ticket buyer will purchase a ticket. We'll ship them a box of about 12 to 14 cans of different beverages and beers and brews. And we're going to have a Cinco de Mayo theme for our Brew Fest this year. So it'll be fun and festive. There's a live stream that takes place the day of the event. It's on May 1st. And they'll be here in Buellton, but we're especially going to be trying to highlight Buellton, our businesses, people to come here and actually when the time is right, when they feel comfortable to do so, to really come and explore Buellton. So we'll have a lot of pre-recorded videos that will be running during the event. We'll have live interviews during the event. We'll have some pre-recorded live music that will play. And they'll be going through all of the different beers and things that they've sent out to all the ticket buyers. So should be a lot of fun. It's a fun theme, and hopefully people can kind of host their own little watch parties within their COVID bubbles and enjoy the event from home in a safe way until we can gather in large groups again. So just wanted to give you some heads up and updates on things that we're working on and some upcoming dates to maybe mark your calendars. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
Any other public comment, Linda?
No, nothing else.
Okay, then I'm closing down public comment. Moving to the consent calendar, we've got 4 items today. Minutes of February 11th, 2021 regular city council meeting. List of claims to be approved and ratified for payment to date for fiscal year 2020, 2021. The 6-month report for fiscal year 2020-21 from the Buellton Visitors Bureau, and the financial report for the second quarter ending December 31st, 2020. Does council have any questions or?
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, Councilman King moved for approval. Councilmember Lewis seconded.
Okay, Councilmember King,
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis,
Hi.
Councilmember Andrusik,
All right.
Vice Mayor Sanchez,
Aye.
And Mayor Sarah.
Aye. Thank you. Do we have any presentations tonight?
No presentations this evening.
Okay, public hearings.
We have no public hearings.
Wonderful. Then we move on to our council member comments / items. This is something that council's noticed going on or something they want brought back for a future meeting. We'll start with council member Lewis. Any comments or items from you?
Yes, I have been talking to a couple of people in the community, and I'm hearing some not so happy people with the amount of speeding on 2nd Street, what the process is for that or what the steps would be, but maybe asking, Highway Patrol or something to sort of make a statement on 2nd Street and try and get people to slow down in our residential areas.
We have asked our motor officer to keep an eye on areas of 2nd Street in particular. And he is in the process of investigating some good areas to place our new speed trailer, which might help remind folks what the speed limit is and help them identify just how fast they're really going as they go down the street. So we'll be proceeding with him on that.
Awesome.
And hopefully get something moving in the next week or so here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Anything else?
I just want to clarify, Madam Mayor, that to Alicia, that Highway Patrol does not patrol the city of Buellton.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That is the county, because we have a contract with the county sheriffs and they do our enforcement here. Although the Highway Patrol has jurisdiction statewide, they do not commonly patrol incorporated cities.
Thank you.
Okay.
As a retired CHP officer, Councilman King is well-versed in this.
I would know that.
Did you have any other comments or items, Councilman King?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Councilmember Andresic?
No, ma'am, do not have any. Committees, I will speak on that one.
Okay. And Vice Mayor Sanchez?
No, I did hear some comments about 2nd Street, just people blowing through the stop sign and passing and that. And I think that maybe the speed trailer will help, and also maybe some vigilance on that street. So we'll get them slowed down. So, thank you.
Okay. All righty. And I just wanted to thank our city manager. The sheriff's new contract has come to light, and we're paying approximately $2 million a year right now, contracting with the Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department. The increase is substantial, and our city manager is working with the other 3 contract cities to see what can be done to bring it down to a more reasonable contract. Anyway, I just wanted to thank him. So that's it for me too. Do we have any written communications tonight?
Yeah.
Committee reports.
Madam Mayor, our groundwater GSWA meeting was this last Monday for water issues. Bill Bulow, we met. It's about an hour and a half meeting, and it's open to the public. We really appreciate the attendance of people. I think they're learning, they're understanding the state mandate on water projects, and we are very active with it. So probably be putting together something to have a public presentation somewhere along the line. We meet about once a month for updates from the organization.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee reports? Okay, SBCAG met last week, and we're still working on arena numbers. The only city that seems to be having an issue is Carpinteria. And I know Buellton's helped them out in the past, and anyway, so it'll be finalized later this summer. And then League of Cities met today. The next meeting is March 24th, Salud Carbajal will be the guest speaker. Today was a Paul Mitchell who spoke about the Fair Maps Act. And I did not, under council member comments, thank staff for putting on the land use circulation element last night, and to thank our planning commission who are all there, and our council who gave up a Wednesday night. It was a 3-hour, fairly long meeting, and I just appreciated the information that we got from staff, and that everybody was there for it. So thank you. All righty, we move on to business items. Business item agenda 5, ordinance number 21-02, an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Buellton, California, repealing ordinance number 20-04 and establishing new protections for commercial tenants suffering from financial impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As you'll recall, back in April of last year, the City Council adopted an urgency ordinance with the purpose of protecting both residential and commercial tenants who were suffering financial impacts due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent health orders and lockdowns that came down from Sacramento. At the time, the City Council felt it was necessary and appropriate to prohibit the eviction of tenants, both commercial and residential, during the period of the public health order. At the time, of course, everyone assumed that the health order was something that was laid down in one blanket motion and that would be lifted in one blanket motion down the road. As we've seen, this has been rather an exercise in iterative attempts to get the right mix of restrictions here. So we've gone from complete lockdown from the state to various stages of the state and the county allowing some gatherings, some businesses to take place, and then back to almost complete lockdown in December. The result of which is it's been very difficult to try and identify or pinpoint those segments of the population that are most severely impacted. In a large number of cases, many people who were initially out of work during that lockdown and unable to pay their rents have found work income again, and may or may not be still in need of that protection. Now, in the meantime, the last round of legislation that has been passed by the state, California has adopted legislation which will prohibit the eviction of residential tenants and provide some incentives for both the tenants to pay a portion of that rent and for the landlords to forgive a portion of that rent in an effort to try and bring everyone up to par. Given that fact, it seems that the city's current prohibition on eviction of residential tenants seems to be not only redundant, but counterproductive, because it may introduce some confusion into which prohibition would be most beneficial to the tenants, and B, if they're relying upon the city's prohibition, the tenants may not avail themselves of the financial aid that the state is offering to help those residential tenants. So at this point, staff has brought before the City Council an ordinance that would, in one part, repeal the ordinance from last year and essentially remove the prohibition on eviction from tenants. At the same time, the state does not have a prohibition or protection for commercial tenants. And so the City Council may find that it's appropriate to extend the protection for commercial tenants. However, again, given the long period of time, it seems a bit unreasonable to expect the commercial landlords, the property owners, to bear the entire burden of financial hardship during this pandemic. And so staff has proposed a solution similar to what the state is proposing for the residential tenants, in that if the council adopts the urgency ordinance before you this evening, commercial tenants would be protected from eviction only so far or only so long as they paid at least 25% of their rent each month. And if that takes place, that gives the property owners some, albeit limited, income or revenue generated from their properties, because obviously their mortgage payments still need to be paid, maintenance still needs to be done on those properties, property taxes, et cetera. But it also diminishes the amount that would be due from those tenants who may still be suffering because of restrictions to their businesses because of the health orders. So this is a compromise. The city council can do what it likes with that in terms of adjusting that number one way or another. The ordinance itself would take effect, and it would take effect immediately if adopted, and it would be it would expire, I believe, on August 31st of 2021, at which point the tenants would then have 6 months to repay all the back rent that they have not paid up until this point. I'm missing something here that I wanted to spell it also. I apologize, it's escaped me here. In the event that the health orders continue beyond this point, or that the city council finds need, this ordinance can be extended. We'll bring it back to the city council prior to that August 31st and give the council an opportunity to extend it if this is still necessary. So with that, I will conclude my report. I'll remain available for any questions. Mr. Murphy is also here. He may have something to add at this time as well. Thank you.
You know, honestly, I think the city manager did a great job explaining what's in front of you. With respect to residential tenants, you are not harming them in any way. If you're doing anything by adopting this ordinance, you're making things much clearer for them. We found in Los Angeles County that the overlap of city, county, and state restrictions was actually making things harder. So several cities let moratoriums elapse. They had put in a 6-month moratorium, extended it for another month or two, and then said, forget it. We're out of the moratorium on eviction business, because down there, the county and state both had them in place. The state's is very fair. As Mr. Wolf says, it strikes a balance between the needs of tenants and the needs of landlords. And in particular, the needs of smaller landlords who count on some of their rental income as a means of paying their mortgage, as a means of paying their own bills. So our office certainly believes that there's no legal detriment to tenants, residential tenants, by setting this up, and really no legal detriment to residential landlords, because they're going to get some level of payment. With respect to commercial, as Mr. Wolf said, you have a complete moratorium on evictions in place. What this would do is simply recognize that most of them are, or most commercial businesses are actually working right now. And so, a 25% rental payment is something that many of them can handle. The moratorium also says that tenants and landlords are not prohibited from working out their own deal. So if they want to work out a different deal and put that as part of their lease, they can do that, and we won't get in their way. This is just kind of a backstop for, the odd situation where a tenant had it tough. Now they're working again, but they can't deal with all their back rent. So we're going to give them a little bit more time. That's as easy as I can explain it to you. There's a lot of legal language in there to get us to that point, but as I said, Mr. Wolf did a good job. I've chipped in what I can, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Before we go to public comment, does council have any questions for either Mr. Murphy or our city manager?
No, ma'am.
I do.
Question, Councilman King.
Scott, do you have a number on how many people are really not making their payments and how much in arrears they are? I mean, is this a major issue at this particular time? Because, and I'll tell you why I'm asking this question, is I know some people that have rental properties, and this moratorium has really made them suffer because they're not getting a break on paying their lenders
Right.
but they're not getting any money coming in from their renters, and then that's mostly on the residential side. So
Right.
what are we looking at on a commercial side? Do we have really a lot of people that are not able to make that note?
We really don't have any idea who this impacts. We received a number of phone calls when this was first adopted and word started getting out to those tenants, indicating that there was some protections in place, which told me there was some need on the part of the tenants to avoid the eviction. Since that's taken place, I've received a couple of phone calls from property owners. Maybe one, or there might have been two property owners particularly that have called me directly and said, "Hey, you're killing me here. I can't, I got to make my bill payments too." The second one of those phone calls was just a few weeks ago. I think it's not a terribly widespread problem now that everyone's kind of figured out how this is working and how they can get some sort of income in. But certainly it's causing some pain to some of the property owners, which is why we brought it back at this point for the city council's consideration. And we just used the state's pattern of a 25% rent payment as kind of a model. If you'd like to go beyond more or less than that, or not have a prohibition at all, that's up to the city council, or whatever you prefer to do.
Okay. Any other questions?
Madam Mayor, if I can, I just want to make a comment on that. The kind of the slippery slope I think that we're looking at is that those people are going to have to make up that 75% at some point in time. Mm-hmm. So, it's a sticky wicket, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, the object here was certainly not to cause more financial problems than we were trying to solve. The object was simply to provide a bit of a buffer to the local economy, so that during that course of that initial 2 to 3 month shutdown, we didn't see 50% of the city's businesses collapse. I think we've maintained the economy to a large extent. I think the need for this is much smaller now than it was back then. But I think there's still an argument to be made in the case of some of these businesses, particularly, for instance, our local health club here, our local gym, is not able to open, and that hasn't changed yet. There are some other businesses that will fall into those categories where they will not be able to open until the city moves into the red tier, which could be in the next week or two. But you never know which way the numbers are going to swing. So, as I said, it's up to the city council's discretion. This is one mechanism for allowing a bit of protection for both the property owners and the tenants. But the degree to which that protection is offered and whether it's offered at all is really a policy call on the part of the city council.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman King. Any other questions?
I had a question.
Councilman Expenditures?
For Greg, what teeth do we have if somebody says, "I'm going to evict these people, I got to make my bills," and then they evict? What can we do? What's the penalty? We go and say, "We told you no"?
Very good question, sir. The moratorium is used by the tenant as a defense in the eviction case. They take a copy of it with them to the judge, show the judge that this applies, that they cannot be evicted, they can't be served a 3-day notice to quit. And if somebody tries to do an eviction in violation of the moratorium and the tenant needs to hire a lawyer, the lawyer can get attorney's fees from the landlord who tried to evict them violating the moratorium. That's really the kicker. So often you're not the kind of people Councilman King was talking about, but your big landlords will come in with a lawyer or two and your tenant won't have one. And the tenant doesn't really, doesn't understand the legality of this. So with the attorney's fees provision, it allows them to get a lawyer. If they're served a notice to quit and they've followed all the processes they're supposed to follow, they go into court and they can hire a lawyer and they can defend themselves against their eviction and be given the right to stay. The city doesn't really get involved. That was one of the nice things when these moratoria were first set up last March and April, was the city doesn't have to get involved. We've just put a law in place that gives a protection to the tenants if they're involved in a lawsuit to try to evict them.
Again, what if we're sued by the landlord that's losing his building because he can't pay for it? And he says the city told these tenants that they didn't have to pay their rent.
Right. That's a really good question, sir. And honestly, there is a lawsuit right now against the state of California, the county of Los Angeles, and several cities down in Los Angeles County, several of the big ones. The lawsuits to date have been brought by large residential landlords saying just that they have a number of tenants that are not paying. And because the number is high enough, that it's basically harmed their business and they're in danger of losing their property. That's one reason that the state has modified its ordinance, and frankly, one reason, a kind of secondary reason that I supported what the city manager brought to you was on the residential side, you're getting completely out of the picture. And, if somebody doesn't like the moratorium that would be in place, they can deal with the state on it. On the commercial side, we would have to defend it, or we would have to consider repealing it. I think it's unlikely, especially given what the city manager has said with regard to the number of businesses that are able to at least pay some rent. But, there is a chance. Yes, sir.
So the people that you said were filing suit, the suit is against the city or the municipality that did that?
Right. In that case, it's against the state of California, the county of Los Angeles, and the cities for saying, as you said, sir, that the tenants didn't have to pay any rent during the period of the pandemic. And I will tell you, with the state being involved, a number of cities down there said, well, let's just get out of the business altogether. The state has the residential tenants covered, and then we won't have to worry about residential landlords kind of including us in that lawsuit. So that was very, very truly a secondary reason for them getting out of it. Primary one, as we said, was they wanted to make things clear and not have conflicting, laws on the books. But secondary reason was to avoid any chance of litigation. Now, several of them are doing what Mr. Wolf has brought to you tonight. And to date, I personally know of no lawsuits based on commercial tenants. Only the residential ones have led to lawsuits so far.
Okay, we're going to be one of the 3 people that get sued if there was a suit, right?
With respect to commercial tenants, you would, there's certainly a commercial landlord could sue and say, I'm going to lose the building. As you said, I'm going to lose the building, or I'm going to lose my business because the city says the tenants don't have to pay rent. And then we would be defending on pretty much the same grounds that the state and those other entities are defending down in LA right now.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we go to the public? Hearing none, I will open it up to the public. Do we have any speakers, Linda?
No, you don't.
Thank you. Then I'm closing it, bringing it back to council for discussion and possible action. How do you feel? It's a double-edged sword. It's exactly what Councilmember King said. You've got business.
Sorry, go ahead.
Councilmember Lewis, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I think that since the state is covering residential tenants and I understand businesses are, almost as important as a home, but there is a difference between someone losing their home and their place to live and someone losing a business. And I think that getting out of the business of having a residential moratorium is smart for several reasons. 1, the lawsuits. 2, the state's got it covered, let them do their thing. And for the commercial tenants, I think giving them just a little bit of time to get over the hump. I mean, we all know, restaurants have been closed. They've only been allowed for takeout. Not we, the city, but we, the state, have really hindered our commercial tenants. And I think anything we can do to help get our commercial tenants back on their feet, give them that little bit of edge, is maybe worth the slight risk that we take on by having this new protection. I think it's better than just dropping it all together and hoping that, you know, these businesses that have been here forever that may have been really hurt can just do it on their own.
Is 25% of the rent for a commercial property reasonable? I'm just asking in general.
Well, Madam Mayor, you got to think about this.
Yeah, it is. Okay, any other comments, or is there a motion? Well, then I will move forward and move to adopt ordinance number 21-02, an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Buellton, California, repealing ordinance number 20-04 and establishing new protections for commercial tenants suffering from financial impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is by title only and waive further reading.
And I will reluctantly second that.
And I just want to advise the council before you vote, this is an urgency ordinance, so it needs at least 4 votes in favor to pass. A 3-2 majority would mean that it did not pass. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, double-edged sword. Totally get it. Linda, roll call?
Okay, Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Councilmember King.
Aye.
Councilmember Andrusik.
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis.
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Sanchez.
Aye. Thank you.
We live in a wonderful community, and it's nice that we can help some of the businesses in our community and the landlords and the property owners. I mean, okay, moving on. Agenda item number 6, resolution number 21-02, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Buellton, California, regarding mid-year budget amendments for fiscal year 2020-2021. Finance Director Chanel Zamora.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, before you tonight is the fiscal year 2020-21 mid-year financial review and related proposed budget amendments, as well as the resolution adopting these amendments. The mid-year report covers preliminary financial data through December 31st, 2020. Attachment 1 on your staff report is an overview of the budget to actuals for all funds through December 31st, 2020. Tonight's presentation will focus on the general fund and enterprise funds, and also capital improvement fund. I will begin with the general fund. The current general fund budget reflects revenue over expenditures of $205,843, and the actual revenue over expenditures for the general fund is a negative $386,092. Total revenue is about $4.8 million. Of that, $3.95 million is from operating revenue, which is about 50% of projected revenue. $829,589 is from proceeds from the capital lease for the NG project. Table 1 on the staff report illustrates general fund revenue by categories. The revenue from taxes are all within budget projections. And then I'll kind of go over the revenue categories that are below the 50% target. The use of money, yeah.
Just real quick, Chanel. If council members have any questions as we go along, just jump in, if that's okay with Chanel.
Yeah, that's fine.
That way we don't have to go back and review it. So, okay, please go on.
So if you look in the use of money and property on your table 1, you'll see that there's 43.7% of revenue of the revenue projections. This is largely due to the performance of LAIF. We have over $8 million in LAIF, and every quarter since the pandemic, the interest rate just keeps getting lower and lower. And before the pandemic started, we kind of projected that LAIF wasn't going to be as strong because there was indicators that the interest rate was going to be lower, but then the pandemic hit and it really, it really plummeted down. And so we're going to kind of monitor this and see how the second or third and fourth quarter performance is. The CDs that the city currently has, the certificate of deposit, they've been pretty strong. When we purchased those, they were over 3%. We have some that are 4%. So that's kind of been helping the city. And another revenue category that's in the use of money on property is rental from the Buellton Recreation gym and rooms. And because there's no gathering, there hasn't been any revenue for those rentals. And then another one that you'll see there is the revenue from other agencies. This is expected to meet budget projections by the end of the fiscal year. A large amount in that category is the motor vehicle license fee that we receive from the county. It's over $500,000, and that's the first installment came in January, and then the next one's supposed to be in April. And then lastly, charges for current services, that's at 40.13%. And that's largely due to COVID-19 impact. The majority of that are Buellton Recreation Program revenues and park reservation fees. Again, because there's no gatherings and people can't reserve the park, so we're not getting revenue from those fees or programs from the recreation center. As things start picking up, we're going to keep monitoring this revenue source. And sometime in the springtime at the third quarter or fourth quarter budget amendments, if we feel we need to reduce these revenue projections, we'll come back with a budget resolution. But at this time, there's going to be no changes to operating revenue. The proposed budget amendments to the general fund revenue totals $837,447. This is to reflect the money received from Sterling's Bank, National Bank to fund the NG Energy project. That totals to $829,590. And then it's also to reflect the reimbursement from JPIA received to replace the public works vehicle. So the impact to the general fund is $7,857. And I'll go over the actual general fund expenditures. So the expenditures for the general fund, we have budgeted, let's see here. I lost my place. So the expenditures for the general fund, I lost my place on this. Okay, so that's your table 2. Table 2 is the expenditures. So if you're looking at operating expenditures, we're about 50% of the budget. So again, we're on target. The non-departmental fund, library, public works, landscape funds were over the 50% of the year. Most expenditures in the non-department category are annual payments paid during the first quarter of the fiscal year and is expected to be within budget and at the end of the fiscal year. The library contract is also paid at the beginning of the fiscal year and is expected to be within budget. The Public Works Landscape Department, we're going to monitor this expense. It's most likely due to the increase in landscaping from the Williamson property and other repairs. If needed, we'll come back at the next budget cycle to increase this number. And then the transfers for capital projects, that's one of the largest expenditures, and that's for the majority for the construction of median 2 projects. So, right now expenditures and revenues are looking good. So there's not going to be any appropriation increase for operating to backfill those overages. Some of the proposed budget amendments to general fund expenditures have been previously authorized by City Council at prior meetings, and there are a few new ones to be approved tonight. These increases to appropriations total $858,177 and include an increase to the departmental fund of $829,590 to include the NG Energy project to the CIP budget. And these costs will be offset from the capital lease proceeds received. An increase in appropriation of $10,000 to the Recreation Department to reflect the repair cost of the Recreation passenger bus. An increase in appropriation of $10,000 to the Public Works General Department to reflect the property tax expenditure for the Williamson property. An increase of $730 to the Public Works General Department to reflect the monthly service sewer charge at the Williamson property. And lastly, yes.
Quick question, Chanel. The property tax for Williamson property, I thought city-owned properties did not pay property tax.
So when I contacted the county when we received the invoice, they said, go ahead and pay it and most likely you'll get a credit.
Okay.
So that was the answer I got because I asked the same question to them. It's like, we're a city, we shouldn't pay property taxes.
Correct.
Okay. And lastly, you're welcome. And lastly, an appropriation increase of $7,857 to the General Public Works Department to reflect the cost of the Public Works replacement vehicle. The total replacement cost of $29,075 will be allocated between the Water Fund, Wastewater Fund, and General Fund, and will be offset with the proceeds from insurance. And next, we'll go over the Wastewater Fund.
I had a question. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But, on the city tax deal, Greg or Scott, is that something that we should pay or not pay? Are we either supposed to pay the tax or we're not for the property tax?
So you want to take a swing at this? I've got my response, but I'm not sure it's your response.
You know, my best response legally would be to say, pay the tax and then challenge it. I think that's the best way to go. I don't think it behooves us to get into a fight with the county over it. I think it does behoove us to pay it under protest, and then let's get working with them to get it back. Scott, anything different?
Oh, that's where I'm coming from. So
thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking.
Okay. And then we'll move over to the Wastewater Fund. So this would be table 3 on the staff report. The adopted budget reflects revenue over expenditures of 0. So it's a balanced budget. The actual revenue over expenditures at the end of the second quarter is $110,905. So there's a little bit of a surplus. The city has received about 51% of projected operating revenue. So we're right on target, which is good news. The actual wastewater fund operating expenditures are about 38% of the budgeted amount. The actual expenditures exclude depreciation as it's calculated at the end of the fiscal year. So even though right now we're looking at a surplus, once we factor in depreciation, it might go negative, just depending on what that depreciation number is. And so again, we're not looking at amending any operating revenue or operating expenditure for the general fund. The 2 budget amendments proposed are kind of a wash in the revenue and expenditure. The NG Energy project for the wastewater fund, the expenditures amount to $1,285,863. So the budget amendment is proposing an increase in revenue projections to record the money for the capital lease and increasing expenditures for the same amount to add it to the capital improvement project. So the net effect of the budget would be 0 on that particular transaction. And then in addition, the insurance proceeds from JPIA to replace the Public Works Department vehicle amounts to $7,857. So that would be an increase in revenue projections and the same amount for increase in appropriations to the vehicle replacement expenditure account.
Chanel, can I stop right there for a second?
Yes.
We have historically been bleeding on our wastewater fund. Have you crunched the numbers to see what possibly a percentage increase to at least keep us solvent on that?
On
Have you done
charges,
it on charging on wastewater?
No.
Have you done
We
any
haven't.
numbers on that?
no, we haven't done the numbers on that
Okay,
yet.
that's for a future meeting. Proceed.
And next, we'll look over at the water fund. It's pretty similar to the water fund or wastewater fund, where the original budget revenue over expenditures equals $0. The actual revenue over expenditures at the end of the second quarter is $175,378, and the city has received about 57% of the projected operating revenue. So again, we're looking good at the end of the 6 months. And then actual expenditures for actual operating expenditures are about 54% of the budget. And the majority of that is state water. That's paid at the beginning of the fiscal year. So that's pretty much already in there. So we expect to be within budget at the end of the fiscal year. And again, another note, like the wastewater fund, depreciation is not calculated at this time. The proposed changes to the budget would be to increase revenue projections of $2,040,351 to reflect the project, the ENGIE project, and then it will be, the increase to appropriations would be the same amount for the capital improvement project. And the following increased revenue projections is $7,857 from insurance proceeds to record the money received from JPIA for the vehicle replacement. And the expenditure projection would be the same amount to account for the acquisition of the vehicle. And that would be a total net cost or net increase of $0 to the water fund. And then looking over to the capital project fund budget amendments, that's a wash. So basically it's adding the whole project for NG, which is a little bit over 4 million. So it's $4,147,947 increase, which is to be allocated within those three project funds, 092-219, which is the general fund portion of $829,590, project 092-612-020, which is the water fund portion of $2,032,494, and the water fund portion, project 092-711-005 for $1,285,863. And then the total project cost was a little bit over 4.5. We already had $400,000 budgeted for industrial waste streetlights. So the budget amendment just removes it from the project 092-311 and puts it in 092-219.
Okay, Chanel, I had a quick question. I'm sorry, I was muted. I was talking and I.
No, it's okay.
Going back to the wastewater, we're doing a 730 appropriation for monthly sewer service. That's 730 for the year for sewer service, or is that
for the year?
That's for the year. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And when you get back to the industrial waste streetlights project, the year 400,000 appropriation decrease because Angie's taking care of the solar. In our capital improvements, we had 467,500. So what's happening with this?
Well, I just left it there as a buffer. I don't know if Rose has more information about that. If it's not needed, we can remove it from the budget.
And then does that go back into the general fund?
Yes, it would go back to the general fund.
Okay. I hate to leave 67,500 sitting in a project that NG is taking over. I don't know if Rose needs it for anything.
The only
Mayor,
reason,
okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Mhm.
The only thing I can think of is we'd have to check to make sure if we've had clearance from PG&E costs, if we've been invoiced for that yet or not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that? Okay, so also as part of the mid-year review, what I provided City Council is kind of a 5-year forecast on the general enterprise, just on where we are at right now. So again, I just provided this for informational purposes to see, you know, the decisions we're making now and expenditures, how it will look like in the future. The forecast has the CalPERS unfunded accrual liability amount on there, and it also has the debt service payment from NG for all 3 funds. And the UAL information numbers come from the most current valuation report dated June 30th, 2019. And that's assuming that the city is going to pay the amount on a 15-year amortization period. Do you have any questions on the forecast?
I had some picky Annie questions. On page 65, when you're going through the budget report, general funds, operating expenses, we've set aside $5,500 for elections and we only spent $99.60. So all this money that we spent, say travel training, we set aside $10,000. We've only used $536.39. All this extra money is going to roll back into general fund at the end of the year. Is that what we're?
Yeah, because it would be budget savings, so we wouldn't have spent the money. And if there's a surplus at the end of the year, it just goes into general reserves. So it's just going to roll over.
Okay, so we're not going to take that. I noticed miscellaneous operating and maintenance, just miscellaneous category. We've already spent almost 82% of that budget for the year. So we're going to try to make every line balance, right? It's not going to get shuffled around.
We're going to try to make any budget line item work. Again, for transparency purposes, if there is a big expenditure in one particular line item and we need to transfer it over, we'll go to council. We've done that before with several items. I think last year when we had savings and insurance and we put it towards the computers.
Yeah,
definitely. If we need to shuffle big expenditure items like that, we'll make sure to come to council just so it can be transparent.
Thank you. And I noticed, Linda, you had a city clerk, your hourly employee. We were going to hire somebody to help you put everything on the get it all digital. We're just going to hold off on that this year.
Yeah, with COVID, you know, we're limiting the people that are in City Hall, so wasn't probably a good idea to, you know, to do it this year, but maybe next year.
City Hall's pretty quiet right now. Anyway,
it's pretty quiet. And also, I wanted to mention on elections, we've not received the invoice yet. That should be coming anytime from the county, and it's typically about $2,700 to $3,000 in that range. Could be a little bit more, but we've not received it yet. And that's for last November. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So just summarizing, the proposed appropriation increase to the general fund amounts to $858,177, which is offset with the corresponding revenue in the amount of $837,447 for a net change in appropriations of $20,730. The proposed appropriation increase to the wastewater fund amounts to $1,293,720, offset with the corresponding revenue in the amount of $1,293,720 for a net change of $0. The proposed appropriation increase to the water fund amounts to $40,351 offset with the corresponding revenue of the same amount for a net change of 0. And lastly, the proposed appropriation increase to the Capital Improvement Fund amounts to $4,147,947 offset with the same revenue amount for a net change of 0. So with that, the city staff recommends that the City Council consider adoption resolution number 20-02, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Buellton, California regarding mid-year budget amendments to fiscal year 2020-21. And if you have additional questions, I am free to answer them.
Thank you very much,
You're
Chanel. Does anybody have any questions before we go to the public?
No, ma'am.
No.
Nope.
Councilmember King, I did notice the 5-year projection for wastewater. It does get lower and lower and lower over the 5 years.
Yes, I see that, but it's kind of at a snail pace. You know, we've been looking at this for several years, and our wastewater has really operated at a deficit for quite a while. I don't want to put too much of a burden on Scott and Chanel, but you know, when you don't have anything to do, we might want to take another look at that and just say, how can we expedite this? You know, Holly and I came on council in 2008, and it was like, it was like a Cecil B. DeMille movie. I mean, we were bleeding horribly, and our water and wastewater, and the previous councils were very apprehensive about raising those costs for political reasons, but we shouldn't really put the city in financial distress and start taking money out of our general fund to prop up those water and wastewater fees. And I don't think really that it would be a lot, you know, and I don't think people would really, you know, have that much of an issue about it. But if you could take a look at it, maybe just look at some of the numbers and say, hey, if we raised it 2%, we could decrease that by 3 years. You know, it's like paying extra money on your mortgage. You know, you're going to reduce the number of years that you're going to be in debt. So maybe in the future, we could take a little look at that and say, hey, a 2% increase, we'd get out of that in 2 years or whatever the numbers are.
We will take
something that's not too painful.
Okay. Yeah, we will take a look at that. That has been an item of concern for me since I arrived at the city. It's one of those things that jumped out of the financial documents when I was first looking at coming here. That was a potential problem. Just to temper expectations a little bit, though, we will take a look at it, but we probably need to wait to take a look at it until we see some stabilization in terms of not only city revenues, but stabilization in terms of wastewater utilization. With COVID here, with the hotels down and such, if we look at what our rates are right now, what we're bringing in based on usage, it's not going to be accurate. It's going to be anomalous. And so we need to wait until things stabilize a little bit so we can get an accurate picture of what those revenues are going to look like. And then we can make it an accurate projection as to what we may need to look at in terms of an increase.
Right. That's why I said when you don't have anything to do.
Might be that long, sure.
Well, and my concern is, and John knows more about this than I do because he worked in that field. You know, this is a machine. I mean, wastewater is a machine, and you're always going to have maintenance costs. You know, it's like not saving any money for your car, and then, you know, you need a new transmission. Well, then you're going bigger debt to replace that transmission. So I think maybe if we can start maybe propping up a little bit of a fund for that, rather than saying, okay, well, now we're going to be out $500,000 because this broke or that broke. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Yes. Mm-hmm.
The last time we did an increase, though, Ed and I were the ad hoc committee, and the city had to hire somebody who was affiliated with the state to come in and run a whole checked out. You have to justify everything. You can't just say we're going to do a 2%. It's got to be justified, and it's got to be hired. You've got to hire somebody who's certified What was his name, Ed? You're really good with names.
Oh,
Do you remember?
that kind of money, I think I forgot.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're right. It's something we do need to look at, but I think city manager's probably smart to wait until COVID gets a little bit better, and we'll see. But yeah, well, Scott's got at least a couple hours in his 24-hour day that he's not doing anything.
Yeah,
After
nothing to
the
do.
kids go to bed, I can squeeze something in there, I'm sure.
Yeah, nothing to do. I just think maybe, Mayor, before we go out and start hiring people for a couple of $100,000 to do these big studies and surveys and whatever, just take a look at some of the numbers and go, what would it take? Because it may not be worth it really to go the avenue, like Holly says, devil's in the details. If we say this much of an increase would put us at this point in time, we'd be flush with that wastewater fee. If it's not going to really hasten the plow that much, then maybe we just say, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before I go to the public? Hearing none, I'm going to open it up to the public. Linda, do we have anybody from the public?
No comments.
Then I'm closing it to the public, bringing it back to council for discussion and possible adoption.
I'd make a motion for adoption.
Vice Mayor Sanchez, seconded
I'll
by
second that.
Councilmember Lewis. I think she beat you.
Okay, never mind then.
Chanel, I do want to say I truly appreciated this. It was so thorough and so well put together. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, okay, Linda, roll call.
Okay, Vice Mayor Sanchez.
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis.
Aye.
Councilmember Andrusik.
Aye.
Councilmember King.
Aye.
And Mayor Sierra.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you again. It was very thorough, and the 5-year forecast was really interesting to see. I know you put it together very conservatively, and I hope that your numbers are way off and we just take off, but I was appreciated.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chanel.
Well,
Thank you, Chanel.
hopefully after
You're
this
welcome.
whole thing is over, everybody needs someplace to go and they all come here.
Yes. Hopefully before everything is over, they need someplace to go when it's here. Yeah.
Correct.
Mhm.
Double masking. City managers report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I'll give you a brief report this evening. As you are all eagerly anticipating, March 6th, it has been confirmed as of today, will be our council retreat at the Williamson property. I did receive final confirmation from the Public Health Department this afternoon that the kind of meeting we are proposing and the size which we are anticipating is permitted under the current health order. So we are good to go. We will be organizing lunch and such for the City Council, and we should have an agenda out to you early in the next week. And so that will give us some time to contact some of the other organizations who may want to take part in the afternoon portion of the meeting. The morning portion, as we mentioned earlier, will be more of an administrative, procedural discussion, some items that the council has brought up in terms of priorities that they'd like to see. And in the afternoon, we would look at a walking tour of the Williamson property, as well as some discussion as to what the City Council may want to see ultimately done in that location. I will note that the anticipated ribbon cutting at the Botanic Garden has been postponed and will not be a part of the day on March 6th. We'll look at another date for that. The Botanic Garden will notify us of another date for that, probably later in March. The other item I have on our agenda this evening, I'm going to hand this off to our Public Works Director, Rose Hess. She's been hard at work for the past several weeks trying to accomplish something that I was desperately hoping to get accomplished. And I'm going to let her tell the City Council what it is that's going to be happening very shortly. Rose, you want to make the announcement, please?
Thank you, Scott. So in about a couple of weeks, We should see additional activity on Highway 246 on the east end of town, as their landscape crews should be removing the rest of the eucalyptus trees that are at the corner of 246 and Thumbelina. That is the news I received today. I will still be waiting with a lot of anticipation until the day comes that actually happens. So for now, we have hope for the next few weeks that this will continue and occur as planned.
Good job.
And then following that occurrence, we will begin work on laying the groundwork for a sidewalk extension along that stretch of Highway 246.
Yay.
Absolutely, which means we can program that during our budget process for the next 2 years.
Excellent.
All right.
What's the date on the removal? Rose, what date are you anticipating the removal? Or-
I don't have a confirmed date yet. I was just told in about a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And they still need to come out and do the cleanup on the trees that have fallen already, so.
Yeah.
I had a question. Are we going to be replacing the water and sewer lines there at the same time?
Not at this point in time.
Can we look into that? Because I know that's been a bone of contention for a lot of us. I mean, at least get that on the works.
Well, the water lines are intact because we don't have any leaks in that area. And also in our inspections and CCTV for the sewer line in that area, that is still intact as well. So we're going to be monitoring when they do the removals, that they're doing that in a careful and surgical manner, so it doesn't continue to affect any of our lines, and protect those in place.
And then going forward, certainly with those trees gone, that would give the city a whole lot more flexibility in terms of doing that work when the time is when it's determined necessary to do it. So.
Absolutely.
Good planning.
Good.
Wouldn't we do that before we put concrete over it? We're going to concrete over tree roots or roadway? If the roots are there and they're entangled in it. Okay.
We'll have to look at the root situation as part of the design for the sidewalk or whatever improvements go in there. That's all preliminary work that'll have to be done before construction. So.
Thank you. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Rose. With that, I'll conclude City Manager's report for this evening. Thank you very much.
Mr. Wolf, I just had a quick question. NG was going to get going on the solar lights on industrial. Have they started yet?
I don't believe they've started. Rose, do we have a target date on construction?
I don't have a target date in construction yet. They are working on all the projects simultaneously, and we're just in the start of design and getting going on different items at this point in time. So as we move along, and I'll have updated schedules. As it is, things have already slid just with their own contracts with the contractors and getting other additional information. So until I have something more solid and secure that I can share, that may be a few more weeks.
Okay.
But I think.
Go ahead.
Just going to say, I think it's safe to say, and Rose, correct me if this is not your impression, but NG is driving hard to get this completed as quickly as possible. They are really pushing the schedule as much as they can.
Yes, they are very aggressive on their schedule.
Good. I appreciate it. We were told January they were going to start down there. So yeah.
Now the kickoff was in January for all the projects overall, but field work will probably take a few more.
Thank you. All righty. Moving on to closed session items. Mr. Murphy, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council will now adjourn into closed session for two items. One, the potential initiation of litigation per Government Code Section 54956.9D4. And the second, the performance evaluation of the city manager under Government Code Section 54957. The time's now 7:19. Ma'am, what time should we meet?
7:25 work for you guys, or do you want to make it 7:30?
7:30.
7:30 it is. Is that
Yeah.
okay with Councilmember
7:30.
Lewis?
Yes, it is.
7:30. You've got a phone-in number, so call in and we'll be back together in about 10 minutes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Where's the number at?
It was emailed earlier today.